All right.
Got it.
Perfect. All right, so WordPress news and events. I thought we'd probably spend a little bit of time today. If people haven't seen it yet, there was recently the State of the Word presentation was given by Matt Mullenweg, who's the I don't know his exact title. I call him kind of the evangelist, kind of the public face of WordPress. And this was recently, so just a few days ago. And the recording is available too. So if you go on YouTube or just Google State of the Word 2022. So I put together some of the highlights, and I'd love to others chime in too, or like reactions and things. I know Peter chime in, but other folks on here too have watched it. I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts on this. So again, this, just to give some context, this is a presentation that Matt gives every year, talks about kind of the past year, what's happened in WordPress, kind of where WordPress is going. I've probably been watching these since at least, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years or so, even before I started getting into WordPress, just to get an idea of what it was about. So some of the interesting highlights, one is the block editor, formerly known as Gutenberg, sometimes still called Gutenberg. So today's visual editor, the WYSIWYG editor. One thing that was neat, I wasn't aware of, is that that block editor now is actually being used on non-WordPress sites. So they had a couple of examples of sites that are using the Gutenberg or the block editor front end, but the back end is not WordPress. It's not, it's a separate instance of it. So that kind of leads to this idea they talked about, the visions creating some sort of open block standard. So taking the work that they did for the block editor and somehow almost abstracting that from the back end of what we know, historically as WordPress. So that's an interesting thing, and I don't know how far that's going to go, but that's the first time I've ever heard about it. I don't know if anyone else has ever seen examples of that or not. And I don't think it has a big implication on WordPress developers necessarily, but to me, it sounds like something that maybe they're trying to position this towards. I mean, you look at all these other visual drag and drop editors out there, for things like Wix and Squarespace, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if this is a way to get people to eventually, we hope, have some common standards around what a drag and drop visual website editor looks like. Any thoughts on that? I don't know if anyone else has heard much about that. No.
It's going to be interesting to see how far this goes, but anytime you have a common environment that developers could kind of cross-pollinate or work in other environments should be a pretty good thing. I know Drupal and Tumblr, which are both very interesting, and their tie-in to Gutenberg it's pretty interesting. But you're right, it's kind of like, oh, that is still an over there kind of stuff, but at the same time, for those who are actually developing in it, it's pretty interesting.
I think I don't want to spend a lot of more time on this, but I think where this could be a wonderful thing in the future, if it ever gets to this, and maybe this is just naive, is, I think about even myself as a WordPress developer going from site to site and just the learning curve between, a site that's using Elementor or Divi or, one of these older page builders or even Gutenberg. There's just always this, like, in the end, they're all outputting the same thing, but just that learning curve jumping around is kind of a pain. So, ideally, yes, there'd be something platform agnostic, like a open block standard we can use, but again, probably in the future. The rest of these, some of these are just more around, this is good news in terms of engagement. So as most people are aware of, or in their own lives too, like, 2021, from a WordPress standpoint, seemed to be a fairly low period of engagement. A lot of groups became dormant. A lot of WordCamps were being canceled, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the good news is in this past year, they said the number of active Meetup groups doubled again from 2021 to 2022. So that's great. And we can attest that to ourselves. Our group has had some pretty good growth and attendance throughout the year. That also leads to the good news in terms of 2023. They said they already have 34 WordCamps planned for next year. So again, by attending these meetups and looking at local WordPress groups and WordCamps, et cetera, as they stay engaged, and people like everyone who's on this call today, you're part of the community and really keeps, I think, WordPress going and active. Which kind of leads to the next thing, which I wasn't aware of. WordPress itself turns 20 years old next year. So it's been around for a while. And I don't know if they still have it, but at one point on WordPress.org, and next year as part of the anniversary, they'll probably show it. But they've had a couple animations that have shown kind of what the WordPress backend has looked like over the years. And it's phenomenal to see kind of where it came from to where it is today. So be on the lookout for that. Probably a lot more stuff going on next year around the WordPress anniversary. Again, some of these others just minor things. Learn WP keeps growing. A little more courses are added. Now, Peter's, you're still involved a bit with the Learn WP group?
Yeah, just on the edge these days. They work in GitHub, which is not an area. If you got to be a Slack and GitHub kind of person to really be as fully engaged. Although everybody is welcome and they're great people and they will, and you don't have to be. But some of the things that I was doing, and it was a focus that I've backed off a little bit on. But there are other make groups in the community that I'm definitely paying attention to. One of the ones, real quick, is that it's kind of relaunching in January, is a focus on the Pods plugin, which is a custom post type, custom field, but open source free tool. And with my experience with ACF and Toolset, and kind of being disappointed with some of the things that have happened with Toolset, and looking at there's a number of other ones, I'm kind of been really intrigued about Pods just because it's been there. Maybe at the end of the call, if anybody has had an experience, it'd be really interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
I know you're going to say WordPress.org website being redesigned. And
yeah. Yep. So I think the content and the look and feel of that looks like they're redoing that. So a lot to, again, this is one of the things too, that WordPress.org itself is really a great repository of information. A lot more things are getting linked to there. So that Learn WP, again, like I said, they're all free, online mini courses for folks who are new in WordPress. That's a great place to go and find some resources. We also sometimes, Peter and I, look at that for ideas for our Meetup presentations as well too. So a lot going on there.
Definitely. And then one thing, let's see if it's on this list to create the black. Okay, at the bottom, we'll get there.
Yeah. So Openverse is another one too. Just again, people aren't aware of this. We talked about this with WordPress 6.0 launch, but this is an open library of free stock images, but now they also have audio on here too. So if you're doing anything with podcasts, for example, you can search and filter things by images or audio. We'll talk a little bit later about this getting integrated more into WordPress itself and pulling some of these images into your site so you can kind of see them a little bit easier. So that's a new thing too. They said they've added a lot more resources there and now includes audio files. Again, just quick recap of last year, 3 major WordPress releases. We're at the end of phase 2 of Gutenberg. We'll talk about that a little bit more in our slides. We talk about what these different phases are. Kind of a neat thing, which maybe we'll get into more as we talk about further thoughts of the future, but there's another one I wasn't really too aware of. There's a plugin out there on the WordPress repository maintained by the WordPress group called Create Block Theme. And what that is it's basically a plugin for creating themes, or specifically block themes. So this is leading into an interesting idea of what the future holds for theme developers, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea behind this is a plugin that you can start using, customizing what you want, and then export as that package as a theme. So you don't need to know coding, PHP, and all the things you used to have to know to create themes. This, in theory, will export something out that you can then use on other sites. So interesting, more to come. Probably worth us at some point, Peter, playing around with. Maybe we'll do a little, show and tell on that. So that was a neat one. Another cool one he just kind of mentioned offhand in the talk was around the categorization or taxonomy coming to plugins in the plugin repository. So what that means is, so today, if you're searching for a plugin on WordPress.org, let me see if I can find, what is it again? Plugins. One of the challenges people have is the sorting in terms of all plugins in some ways look equal. I mean, yeah, we've talked about this before about you want to look for plugins that have high number of install bases, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that they're trying to do now is add this additional taxonomy to say, what's the intent of the creator of this plugin? Did they intend this to be just a private, small plugin that's just being hosted on the repository? or is it a commercial plugin? You know, there's a lot of plugins out there. If you're new to the WordPress space, a lot of plugins that are like freemium models. You get a couple of features for free. You want the better stuff, you got to pay. So they to me, this is a good thing about transparency. So they're going to start allowing people to both tag that and search for those things. And then they have this idea too of these canonical plugins. So these are plugins that really get extra WordPress attention and support. And in theory, more eyes looking at it in terms of security reviews, et cetera, et cetera. So in the talk, he made it sound like, Matt made it sound like this is something that's coming this month. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't looked around for it too much yet, but be on the lookout for that. Was that the one, Peter, you said you were gonna?
Yeah, I'll tell you, you know, it was discussed relatively briefly, but I don't know, they're not calling it an overhaul because it's not, but this idea of making the finding and managing of plugins a little bit better with the categorization taxonomies would be a really big help, because you know, anyone who's gone in there to find tens of thousands even of plugins listed there and going, you know, they can't all be what I'm looking for, and looking at age. I wish they would do things like time things out. If I find a plugin that hasn't been touched in 7 years, or whatever the criteria is for removing things are, hopefully that'll be looked at, because these are all, in my opinion, barriers to folks, you know, kind of embracing it, because there's so much that you can be overwhelmed by. So hopefully starting with this and more attention to the repository, and then, you know, there'll be more feedback and all, and that's the way the community works. And we're all invited to voice our opinions and better yet, you know, offer ideas for solutions. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there.
Agreed. So just again, kind of wrapping up too. So again, we'll talk about the phases in a minute, but we're phase 3 of Gutenberg. That's supposedly starting up in 2023. So that those include things around more collaboration, real-time collaboration in WordPress, improved revision tracking, open verse integration with the media library, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, more around AI in the future. What is AI going to mean? And then this WordPress playground. I'll show this just kind of quickly too. So this is an idea, really neat. Again, probably more just on the bleeding edge right now, but this is an idea of having WordPress that's running entirely in the browser, which is very cool. So this, if you go to this developer.wordpress.org, I'll put the link in the chat afterwards too, but what you can do here is, this is an actual site running inside my browser, and I can go in here, click on the admin, et cetera, et cetera. I can go make changes to the site. When I refresh the page right now, I think it's not saving any state, so the whole thing basically disappears. But you know, it's the idea of portability. Like, one of the things that's a challenge for a lot of people is setting up an environment to run WordPress in. Well, we don't know where this is going to go, but kind of this idea of maybe running this in some sort of, you know, package thing, or something, some virtual environment where basically it's all self-contained inside of a browser. So very neat, again, kind of on the cutting edge. Probably more to hear about this in the future, but kind of an interesting idea. So these are kind of the big things, at least I wanted to highlight from State of the Word 2022. Go watch it yourselves. I highly encourage it. It's time stamped, so it makes it really easy if there's a topic you're interested in checking out. So just search for State of the Word 2022. It's on YouTube. And then tool or plugin spotlight. I don't know if you have a quick one, Peter, to cover, but I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I do. Let me grab the screen.
Sure.
Let me.
Oops. Sorry, let me do 1 second here.
Yeah.
1 second. Let me make you. Sorry, we were talking earlier on. If I can make it go. Here we go.
Ah, very good. And let me find that one. Wow, the share has changed.
Uh-oh.
Showing all my windows instead of my screens. That's interesting. Do you see?
I see plugins.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so the tool I think I found this a long time ago and long since forgot. I'm not really sure, but it is something called plugin tests, automated smoke tests for WordPress plugins. If you're looking at a plugin and you just kind of want to get an idea about things about it, and let's just say you're looking at Yoast is up there always. You go to the plugin repository. So just as Ray just showed, go to WordPress.org. Downloads and extend. This is a redesign that they've done. Go to plugins, and then from there you can search plugins, plugins extending WordPress functionality. I'm grabbing the URL of a specific plugin. I come back to this to this website called Plugin Tests. I can drop that URL there and then hit the query, and it's going to give me all kinds of insider information on that plugin that I'm looking at. So, you know, what version it's up to, the PHP that it works on, if there's any kind of warnings and so forth. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, especially if you found a plugin that you're kind of unsure about, you might kind of take a peek here and get an idea of, you know, oh boy, they have, you know, not only can you see when they haven't updated things, but there may actually be warnings. These screenshots are kind of interesting. I think they're generated as part of the process, and Yoast has so many darn screenshots, so you get a lot more insight than you would get. You benchmarks on the speed, the code. It's just it's chock full of info in this thing, and if you go and real quick, you grab just something else. Let's say you're looking at plugins, and see, this is where I wish there was even better sourcing. Like, I just want to look at maybe the new ones, for example. But let's grab the Smart Slider 3. I wonder, sliders can sometimes have a little problem. Come back to that page, drop in the URL, do a quick search, and then you can get a, you know, quick look at all the things behind it. So pretty cool.
It's neat it seems neat for troubleshooting too. So you have a site where you're trying to figure out, why is this plugin causing issues or can't update or something. That's neat.
There you go.
Cool.
Plugintest.com.
And they obviously have to be plugins that are hosted on the WordPress repository, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Very
Peter,
neat.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On that plugin you were just looking at, that testing site, they were talking about PHP issues. Are those issues reported by the plugin developer, or are they getting PHP compatibility things from somewhere else?
I know that from what I can tell, Plugin Test is actually, while the developer is using this as a tool, the tool itself is doing the testing and finding issues. So I don't think it's, if you mean, is it just self-reported? I think its tests are run against and
Okay, that's extremely cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And real quick, there's a really, you mentioned PHP, something that I learned at State of the Word. Somebody had a question, and I've since found out there is a question mark about the compatibility with PHP 8.1, which is really fascinating considering, you know, it's just an interesting topic of discussion. And when you go look to see what is officially supported, and 8.1 technically isn't officially supported at some level. Maybe at the end of the call, I'll get to the detail, but it's just, it works. It's a thumbs up for everyone who's using it, but there's some technical aspect of PHP 8.1, I guess, that isn't 100%. It's probably kind of like, you know, beta test
Are you running sites at 8.1?
Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so am I.
Yep, no problem whatsoever.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, maybe some edge case kind of thing. Interesting. All right, so let's jump into, thanks Peter, as always, good tool or tip. Let's jump into the main presentation for tonight. So we're a little bit late on this one, but that's okay. You gave them a chance to get up to some point releases. So now it's 6.1.2, I guess, is what it's up to, or 0.1.1. So this release came out in November, I believe. We have more details on it later, but we're getting time now. This time of year is a good time to kind of go back and relook at things. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what's new in that release, calling out, highlighting some things we think are worth mentioning. There's a lot in the release, but for most developers or most WordPress users, probably some stuff that it hasn't changed all that much since we talked about this with 6.0. But anyway, so our agenda tonight, we'll do our quick introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the WordPress. Where does 6.1 fit into that roadmap that I just mentioned earlier? You know, where are we in the WordPress roadmap? I'm gonna go first because I'm gonna kind of quickly skim over some of the features that, the full site editor, the query loop, and the 2023 theme. They're interesting, but I would tend to think for most WordPress developers and site owners, probably not the stuff that you're gonna get you all excited about right now. It's good to know, but I don't think your average WordPress site owner is gonna be all that interested in. Where I do think things get a lot more interesting in is the block editor improvements. And so Peter's going to spend, I think, most of our presentation time covering that and showing demos, and then we'll do final thoughts and Q&A. So real quick about myself, I'm Ray, one of the co-organizers of Hartford WordPress group. I've been in IT 25 plus years as a developer, architect, worked for some large corporations, been using WordPress for, I'm going to update that again, probably now 7 years using WordPress. Self-employed, live in Newington, married, no kids, and I am a geek. Peter.
Yeah, I've been working using technology for marketing communications. Went on my own doing WordPress after working at the Hartford Current, our main paper, and we started developing our own sites. And then I've worked for an agency. I've worked for other businesses building sites. I am self-taught. I am not a coder. I love to teach. I am now a self-titled WordPress user advocate, I think is where I'm landing on, just from there's so many developer advocates, and I like to consider myself a user advocate. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut with my wife. I have 2 adult children and 3 cats.
All right, so let's just give again a little bit of context of what is WordPress 6.1, where does that fit into the overall WordPress roadmap? So this is something I copied over from last year because it really hasn't changed, or the roadmap, maybe some of the details have, but this is from the 2021 state of the word, so that's not a typo. But so back in 2021, as we look to the year we're coming to a close, we're pretty much in the middle of phase 2, or the year started, I should say, we're in the middle of phase 2. So this WordPress / what we were calling Gutenberg, it all started back in 2018, and that was when our Hartford WordPress group, one of our first meetups was around what is Gutenberg, way back when. So Gutenberg, now probably called more often called the block editor, is that idea that visual builder or visual drag and drop kind of a builder. So back in phase 1, that was the idea, was around building your content and your pages. So sticking with pages and using a block editor for that. Where phase 2 started was the idea of extending that beyond a page or a post into the site itself. So having that ability to use the block editor for things like widgets, things like headers and footers, etc. So the idea, this theme of phase 2 was customization. So having block patterns, this block directory, and block-based themes. So as I just mentioned, that the State of the Word 2022, which was just given last week, Matt had mentioned that we're kind of coming to the end of phase 2. So believe it or not, that's it's been about how many years now? Going on 4 years or so, but that's starting to wind down, and now they're starting to put more attention and focus on phase 3, which is this idea of collaboration. So probably a lot more to come on this collaboration phase next year, but it's good to hear that again there is a roadmap. There are additional phases beyond where we are today. So where 6.1 fits in, it's probably one of the last, not the last, but it's like I said, winding down phase 2 of customization. So highlights, we'll cover these a lot more in our talk tonight, but here's just a quick visual so you can see a bunch of the things that are on within 6.1. And so I'm going to start, like I said, I'm going to try to keep mine down to maybe 15 minutes or so. So kind of 3 big things to talk about: full site editor improvements in 6.1, the new theme, the 2023 theme, and the query loop. I'll spend like a second or two on that. So some changes to that. So a reminder especially for new folks or beginners. So what is full site editing? As I just said, previously, the idea was that using this block editor, not only could you create posts and pages, but you could also, with full site editing, you can use that same idea of blocks and really think of your entire site made up of blocks. So your navigation menus, like I said, your header, your footer, et cetera, everything's a block. So you're using kind of the same tool set, the same mindset to build different things. And also the idea was setting site-wide styles for your theme, making that easier to set site-wide styles and changing styles of blocks for your theme specifically. So we talked about this a little bit. In some ways, you're becoming a theme designer or having more control of your theme than what traditional WordPress themes allowed you. So, long term, it's supposed to replace what you see today in the customizer. So I'll show you a 2023 theme in a minute. It still says beta on it, so that's a caveat. It's probably not quite ready for prime time yet, but so you do have this new option though with some of these newer themes where you can edit the theme itself. So again, there's real caveats. We talked about this before. For most people running, I'd say your probably more popular themes, there really is no impact. Although I'll be curious if this is going to be true as we go into next year and kind of the year beyond. I think we'll start to see more pieces of full site editing incorporated into kind of the more popular themes out there. And some themes already, like the one we've been building a lot of our sites on, Cadence, they already have some of these full site editing capabilities anyway. So the ability to edit a header or footer, Cadence has pretty much provided that for quite a while, and other themes have. So again, the idea is by having this functionality now baked into WordPress core, there should be commonality of how you edit headers and footers, etc. And again, some older themes also let you change typography, things like that through the customizer. So that's kind of what full site editing is. Again, so what's the big deal? Standardization, like I said, built into core. So I pretty much covered all this. So what do we get in 6.1? So full site editing itself was released with WordPress 6.0 earlier in the year. And again, if you're interested, go back to that presentation that we did. We dive into 6.0. So building upon what's already been out there, one of the new things is more template types in the site editor, and I'll show this in a demo. So previously there were different templates that you couldn't create easily. So for example, I think post archives is a new one. Custom post types and post specific templates, that's actually pretty neat. I'll show a quick demo of that. So now you can create a template for posts or pages, or specific posts or pages, or custom post types. So I'll show you what that looks like. A search and replace tool, I got to remember what that was. I just want to get to the demo. I'll have to bring that up again. Some navigation block improvements. So this is for creating menus in your site. Some of these I probably won't have time to demo. And then viewing templates a bit more easily. So that's some of the improvements that came with 6.1 full site editing. Because I'm going through the slides kind of quickly, I apologize, but I want to get to the demos. I think that'll be a bit more interesting. And then we have a new theme, the 2023 theme. So by default, when your site got upgraded to WordPress 6.1, you've got this theme included. So one of the things that's interesting about it is it includes 10 distinct style variations. We can have a little discussion of how what we think of those style variations, but they're there. I think they're just demonstrating this capability. They're also tagged as accessibility ready. They didn't go too much into that, but some of this was some of the information I got from the WordPress.org site itself. So it's ready for accessibility, but again, obviously, as we were talking earlier about accessibility, there still requires about a work on the site owner side. But one thing that's definitely obvious is when you look at this theme, it's very minimalistic. So it's a minimalist theme with no images or additional functionality. So in a lot of ways, we've talked about this before. What's the purpose of these default themes? Yes, you can use them. Of course, you can. They're fully working themes, but I think they're kind of getting to the point where these are almost like reference models of here's a theme you can use to see the new features. But I don't expect most average people to be building full-blown sites off of the 2023 theme. But again, it's good for showcasing and trying out new WordPress features, especially on a demo site. And kind of finally, the query loop. I don't think I'm going to demo this one necessarily, but so there was a block that was added, I think it was in 6.0, or maybe even previously, a query loop block. So previously, for beginners, if you wanted to, let's say, loop through your posts, right, any other type of things that are saved in WordPress or custom post types, etc., you'd have to write code. You have to write PHP code basically to do that, and a template to then display the results of that query. Well, this query loop block that was added allows you just to visually set configuration settings in a block. It would do the work for you, pulling the appropriate data from your WordPress database, displaying it, et cetera, et cetera. So the new feature that they added with 6.1 is the ability to add a parent filter. So if you have any custom post types are probably a better example of this. If you have a post type that has a hierarchical relationship, sometimes maybe you just want to display the parents, or the children of a parent, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that was something that kind of was lacking previously with the query loop block, but now you can simply, you can see up here, you can simply select the parents if you want to just filter it down to a particular parent. So let me do a quick demo of some of these features. All right, so where is my site? Here we go. So I'm going to close up my other tab so I don't get distracted. Here we go. So as I said, this is a demo site I'm using, and I have the 2023 theme installed. So like I said, if you've been upgraded, if you go to Appearance Themes, you should see this out there. You still probably have the old ones, 2022 out there. So by default, it doesn't, I don't know if it gets activated or not, but I've activated the theme. So it does showcase a little bit here what I was talking about with the styles. So I'll show you the style picker in a second. But let me start off by showing you the templates. So as I said, this full site editing feature itself today is still a bit on the cutting edge. So for this theme, underneath Appearance Themes, you have this editor option, and it still says beta on it. So when you click on that, first off, it brings you into this navigation, which I personally still like to go back to I still want the sidebar. So the full site editor, what's changed with 6.1 is now from a templates standpoint, you can see this theme. Sorry, I can move my Zoom window a little bit. The 2023 theme by default allows me to make changes to these different templates. So a single post template, a blog template, et cetera, et cetera. But what they've added now is when I go to add new, now I have the ability to do some additional ones. So I can create a template for a particular taxonomy or categories, authors, the author page, archives, et cetera. And because I've installed a custom post type in here, I installed the custom post type UI plugin. I created a custom post type. Let me show you again, called cats, because we have our cat theme. So anyway, these are just a bunch of cats, Chester and Blinky. But now in the editor, I can create now a template for my custom post type. And specifically, where this gets neat is I can create a template for displaying the archives of all the cats. So this will, going back to the query loop I talked about, what do I want an archive of cat, the cat custom post type to look like, or a single cat item, what do I want that to look like? So that's new. That ability now has been added into templates in the full site editing. The other piece, which is interesting, because I think it's starting to get to some functionality that I've seen in other page builders like Cadence or Divi or Elementor, is the ability now to have a little bit more, let's say, smarts in terms of when to apply a template. So for example, in this case, now I can say, okay, I want to create a template for a post, like a blog post. But now it gives you this pop-up to say, do I want this template applied for all posts? So all my blog posts are going to have this layout, and that's what we mean by the template. Or do I just want it for a specific item? Unfortunately, to me, this is almost like too granular. Now it's saying, yeah, I want this just for this one particular blog item. Where I'm hoping this is going to get to is where tools like, I'm just keep bringing up Divi, where like Divi, for example, will say, I can create a post template for a post of this category or not this category. So just having more include and exclude logic. So this to me, it's a good beginning. It is at least giving you a little bit more control. I kind of don't feel it's entirely where it probably needs to be at this point, but again, hopefully more to come on this in the future. That's the templates part. Any questions about this piece so far, about the new full site editing additions in 6.1? Again, I'm not sure how many people are using it.
Ray, you can build a template for all blog posts, all posts, or only one post, but not for like a category of posts?
I think you can do categories, all categories, specific category. Yeah, so you have to use the categories.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that one. I thought it was just per post. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, I think it's getting there. So again, just the other quick thing I'll show is styles. So that was under, let me see again, if I go to appearance themes, or is it under page settings? Sorry, 1 second. Oh, I have to go back to my editor again. One thing that always confuses me is that the customizer is missing over here. So I'm always looking for the customizer. Where is that? So the 2023 theme, one of the things it includes is some style variations. So on the 2022 theme, I have this little styles, because this is enabled on the theme. If I click on this, you can see by default, this is the style that's being used for my site. Well, now I can browse these different styles, and they give you 10, 11 of them out of the box. And then you can click on each one of them, and it'll show you. So this is the eggplant, aka aubergine theme, the orangey theme, the canary theme, the electric. So you can flip between them. You know, my thing is this is interesting. I'm not sure how many people are going to use the eggplant theme on their sites, but you know, it's showing you, I think, the possibilities of this as people build more and more block themes. It is nice because so what this is really doing under the covers or behind the scenes is it's changed several things, and maybe it's not apparent. Let me flip between aubergine and canary. So you can see it's changed the fonts, it's changed some styling, it's changed, you know, colors, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the good thing is that you can still tweak things. Like, in fact, over here, it shows you, so from typography, here's what it's done. So here's what it's done for my text. I can still modify that. Here's the colors. I can still modify things here and change the palette. So, you know, again, the idea behind this is, in the past, a lot of themes would give you, let's say, a particular set of fonts and styles, and you could still change things, you know, ideally in a customizer for different themes. This one's kind of giving you some pre-packaged styles that in theory should all go together and should look, you know, work nicely together. So again, I'm not sure, depending what theme you use, kind of what styles they put together. Some of these aren't exactly things I want to use, but again, I think they're for showcasing possibilities, I would say. And then maybe just for
I have a question. I have a question.
Yep.
So I open the 2023 theme, I make a template for a particular post type, then I put cadence on it. Are those templates still there?
Are the templates still there for cadence?
No.
So I build them using
No.
full site editing, or
No,
what is
the
now called editing.
Yeah.
No,
No.
they're not.
No,
Uh,
because in the hierarchy of where the files are, it's a
Right.
whole theme is its own
in the theme.
branch. Yeah,
Right.
Well,
your
gal can
parts
hope,
are in your theme.
can always hope.
Yeah.
Well, and this kind of goes back to what I said before. Until all themes, or let's say more and more themes, start supporting this full site editing interface through this way, I think that's going to be one of the issues too. That it's the experience is going to be different, and what you produce is going to be different. So yeah, not quite there yet.
Well, also the Cadence is using PHP template themes, or their themed. The Cadence theme templates are PHP based,
Yeah.
whereas site editing for block themes, the templates are HTML based. It's a very big shift.
Yeah.
Right? The templates are no longer PHP code; they're HTML code, and the
Wow.
file structure is HTML. When you make a theme or change a theme in the block editor for a block theme, originally it saves that change in the database as a custom post type.
Mhm.
So it's not even in the file structure. It's in the database. So it would still be in the database, but Cadence doesn't have a method currently to read that and convert it, right? This is one of the things that happened with 6.1 that sort of got no fanfare, but WordPress drew a line in the sand. And unless your theme is a block theme, or unless your theme adapts itself to read and have a theme.json structure, there are certain elements of the new blocks that are not available for classic themes,
Right.
such as the image theme. The image theme has border controls and coloring and radius controls. Those are not available to classic themes.
Yeah.
The exception I found is Astra, but Astra now has a theme.json structure. So Astra is one of the first ones to adopt it. So those features are available in Astra, but they aren't. I just checked; they aren't available still in Cadence, and they aren't available in Generate Press. And
which is a great segue to one of the last things I'll wrap up before I hand it back to Peter. So I think this was also added in 6.1 too, is now you actually have the ability when you're looking at themes, let's say you want to add a new theme, you can now filter in the repository to say block themes. So there's block themes out there besides 2023 and 2022. Your mileage may vary in terms of how well they work and what they do. It goes back to there's a lot out here. It's still a bit hard to filter and find the good ones, and does the cream rise to the top or not. So, but again, I think at this point, if you want to play around with them, this is a quick way to find block enabled themes. So that's all I wanted to cover, at least in the first part. Like I said, there's probably, this is a topic I think we definitely want to continue to revisit in the future, but I think probably not the main focus, I think, of what most people using WordPress and Gutenberg are doing today. So let's get to Peter. Do you want me to flip through the slides, or do you want
Yeah,
to?
if you could.
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna spend a little time just on what you were just talking about with the themes, and Eagle will definitely get into exactly what you're talking about. You and I have had another conversation about this very topic, and yeah, it's important. And what's really important for anybody, especially those who are not developers or trying to understand this, it can be confusing. We're going to try to help you decide what to not be confused about when it comes to certain things. One real quick thing that I find interesting is this whole idea of block themes and style variations and all, and figuring out where our themes going to go. And that's, we can have a whole just couple hour just casual debate about this, which I'm not inviting that right now. But this idea of the state of the word from that last year, not the one that just had, was talking about how many block themes we should have, and he threw out a number of like 5,000 or something like that. And it's a really confusing thing, because at the same time, the block maker, do you need more than one theme, for example?
One, yeah, because that plugin that we showed earlier, if that's basically a plugin that's doing all the customization, you just need a skeleton. And that this goes back to this idea of WordPress themes way back, Genesis days. You just need the skeleton, and everything else is.
And our commercial themes now going to, if you have a commercial block theme, is that going to be sold as a package where it's like, well, here's our block theme, and here are all our style variations that give you, you know what I mean? So it's a really fascinating time that we're in, because it's like it's all in flux as far as I'm concerned, and there's going to be, we're going to land across the spectrum. I really do think that, at least for a while. All right, let's fly through these, because then I can kind of walk through. So I want to just say changes. WordPress 6.1 changed their theme dependent, just as we were, as Eagle was saying. Block themes appear to apply to all all the promoted improvements. And when I'm talking about promoted improvements, it's like whenever you go to a video and talk about 6.1, or when you open up your welcome screen and it shows here's all the things that you get. Not universally. Block themes, pretty much yes, as far as my experience. I've only tried a handful. Classic themes do not apply all changes and may do so differently, as we were just discussing. Newer popular themes have their own block packages or methods for managing blocks. So there's an interesting thing where some of the things that are going to core are fantastic, but it took a while to get there. In the meantime, third party said, well, we're going to make these blocks that have all these style controls that people want, and they did. And you may be happy with a Cadence theme with Cadence block collection and go with Pro, or Generate Press and go Pro, those types of things. Plus, there's third-party plugins that do some of the design improvements. The editor's kit and editor's plus kind of thing that gives you a little bit more control. So there's a lot of overlap, and what's now going into core, which is great. There's still going to be plenty of us who are going to be using some of these other tools or other themes. We're going to likely see some of these changes coming in classic themes sooner through coding tweaks. I know. Like Astra doing it, Generate Press, I think it's on the books. Cadence, he's been talking about it. It's an interesting time for that. Next slide. The fun fact, block. So this is something that we'll show. Blocks styled in a block theme will carry those styles over if the theme is changed to a classic theme, or copied from a block theme to a classic theme. And I'm going to show you that. That's a really interesting thing. It's almost like, I don't want to learn CSS, but let me go to a block theme. Let me style my block and then copy it over to my classic theme. It'll carry a lot of that styling with it. So it's a little fun little tidbit in case you wanted to try that, and I'll show it to you. Next slide. So we're going to talk about the block editor improvements. And a lot of the things have to do with how they've gotten more granular in putting blocks inside of blocks, which actually gives you more control over what's in block. So a list block is, has the list items are actually separate blocks, so you can control them, in your block list. And I'll show that. Gallery block, same type of thing. Plus, you now have spacing and individual image blocks with styles, again, dependent on themes. Buttons block, new design controls. And when you create a button and then you add new buttons, just kind of brings that style over. May seem pretty, straightforward, but that is an improvement. It wasn't necessarily there to begin with. Quote block, same idea again. And what's really cool is because a quote block can contain multiple blocks, you can really turn a quote block, which is basically a group that's styled a certain way. I mean, that's really kind of all it is. But, again, a quote block is now, instead of being its own thing, is a bunch of things in the quote block thing. I'll show it to you. Group block, I think, is become a thing where it was like, oh, you're going to group blocks, but now the control that you can have over once you've grouped them is pretty nice. It's a lot like a section, I think, section in Cadence, a container in Generate blocks. So the group block is a really nice little tool as a block itself. Cover block, background image can be set to the featured image. This might apply more if you're putting a theme together through the full site editing. But there's a lot of places where you might want to say, hey, I'm going to put my image. And when you do the featured image, it'll your cover block, you could put an image in there, you can put a gradient, a background color, or you can have that featured image for the post or page show up as the background for the cover block. Columns and image blocks, the border support, the dimensions, things like that, again, dependent on a block theme versus a classic theme. Block locking, I think we're at the beginnings of where block locking gives you content control. There's going to be more to come. I've seen some things where, this idea that it's almost like a mini custom post type or something, but you could create a block that is in a group and then lock certain things in it so that you can't move them, and because you want to have consistency. But that's a developing feature, I think. Navigation block, Ray mentioned it in full site editing, but it is available as a block that you can put on a page. And I remember back when I used to be looking for things to put like sub menus and section menus in and all. So, I haven't tried it yet. I haven't needed it recently, but I know it's something I might be able to turn to. Next slide. The improvement to the block inserter, including improved previews. So you get previews when you're about to change a block, you can kind of see it's bringing in the content kind of dynamically. But with the block inserter, I want to say, and we can look at it for some folks who want to see it, but don't forget that you can manage the blocks in options preferences or use a plugin. Sometimes that list in the block inserter can be overwhelming and you say, I'm not going to use 50%, 80% of the blocks. You can trim that down through your options and preferences. The info link box at the top bar includes time to read and document outline. This is a neat little thing where we've got more insights to what we're writing, and I'm not spending any time on any kind of the spotlight writing and the things that dim other things, and those are in fact, I can't remember if that's in this feature coming in Gutenberg, because you see a number of presentations. But there's, while all this development's happening, there's still a lot of focus on helping writers write, and control the content through the list view. The list view continues to improve and can be one of the best ways to manage your content. There's a lot of power in some of these kind of periphery tools that you might not have used. We'll show you some of that. Next slide is, this is just, and Ray, I think you mentioned fluid typography. I'm only mentioning it here just because it's being presented as a big 6.1 feature. But again, theme base has to be activated, and also don't be surprised that you don't have anything that uses fluid typography. I think it's going to be have a major design impact, that ability to just, instead of going, well, show me my desktop view and what font am I using, show me my tablet and mobile, I want to use a different font. Fluid typography is just going to make that smoother, better, but it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, to get to a certain point. And I think I'm at a point where I can show you some things, right?
Yep.
Okay. So let me grab the screen. Any questions while I'm pulling up the screen? There's a little rapid fire there.
See anything in the chat? Yeah, fluid typography I forgot to show in that 2023 thing. I think it actually was in 2022. I just didn't notice it. It was one of those, like, you define your fonts as just, it's more relative. It's another way to just do relative fonts to say this is big, large, etc., etc.
I know it's being presented often with the things and saying where we are with 6.1.
Yeah, nothing in the chat, Peter.
Okay, so I actually have kind of two side-by-side sites here. I have a full site editing. I have a site that under my my appearance themes, I've got a bunch of block themes loaded. Right now I have the 2023 theme activated, and maybe later we can even play with some of the other themes. I have another site that has a number of classic themes loaded with the Cadence theme active. We for anyone who is new to the group, we're using Cadence because we built a site, build a site with us thing we're going to return back to in 2023, I think. And it's a great theme. We like it. I like it. Ray, I think you've come to like it. I know we have other people who, on the call who also use Cadence, but I'm also a fan of Astra, Bloxy, Generate Press, and I know there's plenty of people who use some of these other ones. These are kind of including the 2020 theme, which is a WordPress default theme. So right now I've got these two themes on two different sites. So a block theme and a classic theme. I have a similar page loaded, preloaded, and I'm going to kind of walk through. Figured this way, instead of kind of building it, I'm going to show you what's there. We could build if someone wants a question, how did you get that? But we can kind of show you the features kind of on either side, and how they work together. Oh, and by the way, I've got something at the end if we want to talk about artificial intelligence and how it can generate content. Some interesting experiments there. So I am now on the this is the block theme, so you'll get an idea of the different look. That's Cadence, and I'm on the editor of both screens. In the classic full site editing, there is definitely a minimalist kind of look to it. So as you see, kind of the Cadence default versus 2023 default. And then if I go under page, and I can look at this page in a new, let me go look at this in a new tab. So this is the page that we're creating. That's a big featured image. There's a number of things on the page that we're going to experiment with. And on the cadence side, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to open this in a new tab. And just to see out of the gate, hey, they look pretty much the same. Well, the reason they look the same is because I built the one on the full site editing, or the block theme, block theme first, copied it over. It did copy over all the styles, but I can't edit the styles in Cadence because of this difference between a classic theme and a block theme. But without confusing you, we'll get into some kind of specifics there. Okay, so one of the first things I want to show you, because I think it's really cool, is first we'll go up the top left here, this letter I, the details box. If you click on that box, there's some neat information. They've improved this over time, and 6.1 added some features. So this is giving us some numbers. It's telling us how many words, characters, new is anticipated, how long would it take to read, how many blocks, paragraphs, headings. And one thing that's really great that I don't think they talked about enough, and this is when we finally do have our accessibility meetup, it's also going to show you the document outline. You get an idea of that when you're looking at the list view, but just in this info box, depending on your headings that you have set, it's that the headings are very important for formatting a document. And this little I button will show you the format, how you have set up your headings, and it'll give you an idea if you've done it kind of wonky, if you have, things that are quite honestly just simply out of order. It's both, again, it's an accessibility, it's a read. It affects search engine optimization for all the things. If a page is easy to read and everything kind of makes sense. But this document outline built into this little little details feature is great. It's a great thing to kind of give you an idea, especially when you're getting into the long posts. Is Sherry still in the guy? Sherry and they write some beautiful posts, and they're long. And I know it. I know that those long posts, when you're kind of taking when managing them, this gives you an idea. I'm going to look at the block inserter next, and the block inserter. I'm sorry, I always do that. The list view. This is the block inserter. The list view, which is again showing you the interaction between the list view and what's on your page, continues to be. Continues to improve, continues to be clean. You can manage a lot. I would recommend anyone who's not spent time in the list view to do so, because there's so many things that people can get, a little frustrated with in managing blocks on the editor, in the main editor window, that they can actually do right in the list view. As many might know, when you're on a block and it's showing me here, if the list view is open, this is my gallery block, these correlate, and I can move a block using the up and down arrows here, but you see it kind of matches over here in the list view, but you can also drag and drop right in the list view. So it's a great way, especially if you're a writer who's capturing a lot of information and then want to organize. You can use these tools like the list view to be able to control that. But this also gives us an idea of, now, if we look at the list block, and here is the list block, this is what I mean by, now the list items are actually blocks within the list block. The list block used to be its own kind of block, but now it's got these sub blocks, if you will. The list items are blocks, which means you can control them like blocks. You can move them. If I wanted 2 to be over 1, I could do that. And you can watch in your list view the fact that it's the same type of thing, where you can move things around that way. So the list view, and we'll probably see more improvements. I know that in block collections, you might have control over the icons and things like that. I'm sure we'll see that, but this is a nice way as they're getting more consistent with how these blocks work similarly. So let's take a look at the gallery block. So this is my heading gallery block. Again, that matches my outline here, the gallery block. And I've got my paragraph there that I wrote. So the gallery block is a style group of image blocks. Each image can be styled separately. Columns and image spacing can be set at the gallery level. So this is a good one to show some of these functions that we've shown. So you see the gallery is actually made up of a number of images. At the gallery block level, you have control. And again, reminder, block theme. You have some control over the block spacing, for example. So I'm looking at the gallery, and I can change my spacing here using the slider. You'll see in a lot of the new functions, and dimensions is that one area for a lot of styling, where you might have the toggle between a slider control like this and a select control, and this select control being set by your theme. So for those who are deciding that they want, and I think they've landed on the numbers. I know that that's been a did in some cases it's still small, medium, large, extra large. And you set those values so that maybe you have consistency, like you're only allowing those types of things. I think many of us are going to be used to saying, I just want to put in the number that I want. That individual item will get into and let me make sure, yeah, on that. If I look at the border, this is an option that I have for the radius, and here's, you can handle each one individually. So, I took this gallery and I said, well, let's put rounded edges, but around the whole gallery. Well, to make that happen, well, the top right image in my gallery, I put a radius of 40% on the top right. And you can see the options that I have, if I wanted to change my radius and so on and so forth, I could do that on a per block level, or a per block, block being an image. So, this is an example again where now that having that control within the gallery now gives you some kind of interesting ways that you can manage how something looks. One thing you have to be careful, if I took this and I wanted to move this, say, to that position, well, now my border doesn't quite match, unless that's an artistic style I want. You've got these kinds of capabilities within that block. So again, clicking on an image, you'll see it matches where I am here in the inserter, and on the right with options open, here are my block options, and then you can see the styles. Now, one thing that won't do a whole lot here, but then we get into things like the border. And, if I wanted to have one of these blocks have a border, I just made it, well, let's make it obnoxious. Let's make it orange. And I can also set the width. But if I click on this kind of connector, don't connect, like all corners, I can control each side of this, right? Can't do that. Let's go over to full site editing. Classic theme, cadence in this case. If I look at that same block over here, I don't have any of those controls. And that's something so that for those, when you go out and you're like, how did he do that? You go look here, or you go look on a tutorial, and then you go into your theme and you click on it and you go, that's the challenge that we're going to see between a classic theme and a block theme. So
hey, Peter, Sue had a question, but before I get to yours, so just this one thing that you just pointed out, Peter, is there anything in the cadence when you copy this over? If you look at that in cadence, the list view, does it show you that block is somehow copied but not editable? Like, is there anything, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't show you that it's like code only or read only almost.
No, but here's something that's kind of interesting. Let's get a little ahead of ourselves here. If I go down to, I think I have one where this one here, this group block. And I'm going to do this without actually trying this before the call. If I look at, oh goodness, under the group, maybe you don't even have that. Where's the code view?
So that it's ever on the three dots on. Oh, I see what you're saying. Click the three dots
Oh, yeah.
on the
Right.
side. Yeah.
So if you go in here in the code editor, you will see that the styling gets copied over, but it gets copied over as the code. So what you lose is the editing interface. But you could still keep the style. So let me go back to the visual editor. So say, for example, I'm over here. Again, I'm going to go back and forth. Let me close these extra, just the display windows. I can open those anytime. But say I wanted this block, just like, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for you when you're in the cadence view. Click on that info circle and I want to see if it's picking up your headings correctly.
Yeah, because these are just core blocks that it's doing. I haven't used like the.
Oh, okay. Those aren't cadence blocks.
These are right. These are core blocks, and we can try that at the end. I can activate. I've got the plugin loaded, but not active,
Sure.
where we can try the advanced heading, or they call it the heading block. It's
no problem. I just
my guess is it's going to read it fine because it's still in the HTML, and H1 and H2, H3.
Well, that's my question because it doesn't pick it up from the other stuff, from the other Astra, Spectra, and generate blocks.
Let's try that before, not right now, but at the end. I want to come back to that. The only reason I'm going to say not right now is because I'm going to come here and to show you, okay, I took this block, I took this full gallery block, and I'm going to copy the block, and I'm going to come now over to my other site. I'm going to go below the block. I'm going to add. Well, sometimes you find that adding a paragraph and then working within it is the easiest way. And now I should be able to see it. It pasted it with the style because the style is written into the HTML, but I can't edit that now unless I go into the code for that block. So it's an interesting thing.
But there's nothing to show you. Like if you go to can you bring up the list view on that for a second, Peter? Yeah, I was curious. That block you just pasted in. Does it show as anything different? No, it still looks like a gallery. Yeah, that's weird.
It's a gallery, right? Yeah. It's just the styling of that block that is now it's basically inline style.
Right.
So
so Sue's question is just more like general. So like that gallery with the rounded corner. It's like how does that display on mobile? I assume that the gallery is all going to collapse into a single row. So
I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
So let's preview that. Oh, preview right here. Let me do that. Yeah. So it keeps the style. So I wonder, that's a really interesting question. I mean, it did what we would expect. So in mobile, instead of being 3 wide, it's 2 wide.
Right.
But that individual block. So now it's
so maybe a different question related to Sue's is if you go back again, sorry,
please.
If you go back to the gallery again one more time, Peter, to like one of those images, all those settings, the editable gallery. Yeah, if you go to one of the images, can you, when you're setting those border settings and stuff today, this is going to apply to all viewports, right? Or can you apply that to differently for desktop versus mobile versus tablet?
Let's try it. Let's go to, if I'm in mobile and I am, great question, and I'm here and now I want to
make it 0 border or something. Yeah, 0 radius. Yeah.
All right. 0. Right. Yeah. Let's look at us experimenting. And so now on mobile, that's no radius there. Now, if I go to desktop, it took it away.
So it's applying it to
all. They haven't figured that out.
That's not as grand. Yeah.
Can you set a border on the whole gallery? Like just go to gallery and then go to the little properties section. Is that possible?
So the gallery, at the gallery level. So I'm either highlighting here in the list view, or again, for anyone who hasn't, when you're on a block, the box that you have, which you may have pinned to the top, depending on, I tend to have it where I am, shows you what block you're on, and then to the left of it is the block that it's inside of. So now I'm on the gallery block, and my options are columns, so I can change the number of columns, and the background color.
Yeah,
So
no,
let's-
it's just block spacing. The dimensions look like just the spacing.
Yeah, but it's just block spacing. So I can do this, right? So I could change the block spacing. But now that's where then you could potentially put that in something else. Like that's when in a generate press, you would put it in a container, generate blocks. In Cadence, you'd put it in a section. In Core, you could put it in a group and then control what happens on the group. And I can show you that a little bit further down here. This is a group block. So the group block has inside of it a heading, a paragraph, a gallery. I dropped a little gallery. In that gallery are the 3 images that I dropped in here. A button, which has a button because you have multiple buttons. And now that's inside a group. Now at the group on a block editor, a group, which is very cool, you now have color controls, background controls, padding. You can control the border. That's where I have gray on the top and the left, and black on the right and the bottom. What the radius is. On the right now it's linked to the full side. So again, I can link or unlink. So this is showing me all 4 corners of that group. Right now they're linked. So I go back over to my classic theme Cadence. It looks good because I copied it over. The only dimension I have that I can control is padding. So the border design and all was all set because I originally did the block in full site editing. I do not have that control in the classic theme.
But back to his question, if you put that gallery in the site editing theme into a group block, you could put a border on it, and then it would appear as though the gallery had a border around it.
Yeah, and that's what is exactly what's here.
Yeah,
that's a gallery.
So the group must really translate to like an HTML something or other behind the scenes, a div or something that has like you can set border settings for it.
If you're working on with a block theme, the power of the group block, I think, is it's just like, again, what we've seen with if you're generate blocks and the power of like the container and how much control, and hey, I could do, and you could set a lot of controls over that, including I should be able to dimensions. Well, the block spacing inside, which is kind of interesting, right? So that's because a group is almost treating it like columns or whatever. So I've got some of the spacing that I can do within that group. What I don't seem to have control over, let's see, is margins around it.
Oh, you do. Yeah.
Oh, no, there it is. That's the other thing. When you're in dimensions, you have to turn things on. They don't always show up the way you would expect them to just be there. And by the way, coming up in future versions of this, as they're playing with now, as they're adding more styles, that this options block is going to have tabs. So you'll have like styling will be kind of like what you see when you go
with page builders.
Yeah, with page
I
builders.
think in Divi or Elementor, yeah, it's all roads eventually going to lead to some kind of UI paradigm like that.
Exactly. So you can see, again, I'll play with it. This is, when I mentioned the block, I created a block, and now when you're in the block, and so I'm at that, here's the block, the single block, button, sorry. Ray, always feel free to just correct me. Button within the buttons block. Now, if I'm on the buttons, I can add another one, and it's just going to bring over the style from the previous one. interestingly, it didn't do that at some point. You know, we're used to that again in a lot of the other tools, and I could call this button 3, for example. You know, and then like you may, you know, do you want to center everything and things like that? You've got your controls here, but each individual block has padding. Let's see what we can put on. So it's just padding for the blocks and the border, right? So this is where I can make them, you know, maybe I want them all to look like pills. That's a border option, radius on that border. The styles are interesting. Is that, you know, you don't have that. Yeah, I've got an outline where I can make it an outline button. I think it'll turn that on. But anyway, the idea the idea is here that you create a button and then it should be easier to make, you know, duplicate buttons within that button group. What I haven't tried is, well, if I change the style, which one does it, you know? Well, I guess I could just do it. Let me change this to radius, a square button. And now if I go back to my block and I add a new one, it takes whatever that previous, it just looks, the previous one makes a duplicate. That's really all it's doing. Nothing too complicated, but all these things are saving us, you know, steps here and there. If I look at the classic theme, you know, that functionality works in terms of the button, you know, adding a new button. That all works similarly. But what I think is not, we don't have, see, again, this is where some of the things carry over. There's dimensions and they are using padding, and I do have control over the border, same kind of thing. So it's not 100% that you're not going to see some of these things. I started building I'll bring it up real quick. I started building an Eagle. You will possibly appreciate this if I can open the window, find it. You know, I started building a little bit of a table that's going to say, okay, which theme, which of the dimensions are available and all, and just kind of making this so that we can kind of get an idea of what we can expect. But this is where Astra worked. Bloxy seemed to work for all of these things. Cadence, the padding was there as a dimension pretty, I was saying, do I have to do this for every block? But the padding was there, but the margin of the border that we just saw was not there. Again,
and this may change over time as they start to adopt more of these things into.
I really think so.
Yeah.
I really do think so.
One thing that just, sorry, I'm sort of thinking, one thing that's kind of odd is if you go back to the full set editing theme. Yep. One thing where they sort of break their paradigm is for buttons. If you look at the list view, you only have one button. You know, as opposed to gallery, everything's broken apart into images, the list items, everything's broken apart. But in this case, for some reason, the buttons, it's still just one button item there, as opposed to. Okay, I'm sorry, you look at the wrong one. All right,
you're looking at the wrong one. Yeah. Because as soon as I clicked on it, it went further down the page where I was.
I thought you were adding from there. I'm like, it didn't make any sense. All right.
Yeah. No, it's all similar. And if I, again, same idea. If I wanted to move around, here, I can put button 2 in the place of button 1, and I can put, you know, that list view. A lot of times, you know, I'll come here and want to do that drag and drop thing, and I'm like, why? That's so painful. Sometimes I just want to, you know, it won't let you put in a quote block inside a button block. That's good. That shouldn't, or a heading in that case. The heading for quote block, just while we're here, is again showing you. And a lot of people were looking for this kind of simple thing, the ability to say, well, I want my quote block, but I want to be able to put something in there. And in this case, I put, you know, each one of these as a separate block. And, you know, and again, the power of that might be, maybe I want to change the order. I don't want the heading to be there. I want it back up there. Or again, these types of things for me, it's a lot easier just to do this too, right? So I'm just clicking the up and down arrows on this option bar. But that ability to put, if I wanted to put in an image here, oops. Again, for people who are using it, when you're going to enter it and you hit slash, you will get a list of kind of the blocks you've been using, and I can go to, image isn't there. So I know if I start typing, it's going to say, okay, you want an image. And let me go to the media library. I don't know if I have anything there. Yep. And I want that image maybe and put that in. Well, this image is now inside the quote block. Maybe I want it just to be a thumbnail image, and I want it aligned, right. Alignment right is the float. It's still kind of weird when you versus, something that's in line.
But this is good because like this block you're showing, you're basically creating a testimonial. You're talking about like testimonial block kind of deal. So yeah, you have an image of somebody, and then you have, the text about it. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting you say that, because that's actually the philosophy behind things like a generate blocks, which is pretty much all the blocks except for certain levels of functionality. People like accordions and tabs and things like that. But a lot of, you go and you say, hey, that they have an info box. Well, an info box is really just a headline, a blurb, an image inside a container, that kind of thing. And like a generate blocks, you go and go, why is there only a handful of blocks here? Well, because it's meant to, you make your own. And then you could save them as a block pattern. You could just copy them, pretty easily. Again, this idea that you can just come up to here, whether it's on the block or you go into the list view, and I could just say, maybe I want to just duplicate that. Now I got 2 of those, and now I want to just edit it. There's so many ways that you can kind of save steps just through a couple of clicks, because we have this kind of this view of everything through, oh, I don't want that. Let me remove the group. Now I'm back to here. So yeah, a lot of power in taking, some of these blocks and kind of breaking some things up.
Peter, can I make a quick observation on,
You sure can.
what you've been going over? Coming from a background of, theme builder, page builder guy, and, the hell with basic WordPress, you got to have the, this is it works probably more simply and intuitively than almost any page builder or theme builder that I've used.
Yeah.
And I can see how if someone wanted to like put together a clean, simple site, especially with mobile first design.
Yeah.
Or a mobile centric site where you maybe didn't care so much about the desktop and could tweak it later.
Yeah.
This is like very free and easy way to get a site together in a minimal amount of time. I think you sold me.
Yeah, it really, once you kind of see these things, and I say this with all sincerity, I have worked on sites using Elementor. I didn't build them, but I've gone in and I've built a lot of sites using Beaver Builder. When I have to go back into Beaver Builder and maintain them, honestly, it is so much harder. It's the whole Beaver Builder, and all the drag and drop is great, and yeah, when the Gutenberg plugin, when the block editor came out, they had to keep working on that drag and drop, and it's still not great for everybody. I actually prefer the list view.
Yeah.
Me
too. Like in Divi, I always would go into the wireframe view because I'm like, I still need to see blocks to move things around, because visual, I can't just do all visual. But this to me is like the perfect compromise of, you got the visual in front of you, but you got kind of the wireframes on the,
you don't want it
side. It's perfect. Yeah.
If you don't want it, hide it. It's pretty, it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, looking at the time, I want to do one thing. I did want to cover the cover block, because that was just, this is an example of where this cover block is set to, where is it? Once you put it in.
It's in your page you're looking for? The page tab for the feature.
The fact that it is using the featured image.
Yeah, click on the page. You're on block right now, Peter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I change this now, the featured image for that block is now the sunflower, because that's, or whatever that is, because that's, I've set this block. Say I'm going to go insert a cover block. And I put in a cover block. Oops, that's the code block. That is not a cover block. By the way, different blocks can transform into other things. And when you click, and even this has been expanded a little bit. Obviously, we can't convert a code block into a cover block, but you can convert it to paragraph, text, put, you know, group if you had a number. So I'm going to remove that. But a lot of times, you know, that's one way to write quickly. If you just write using nothing but paragraphs, you know, just write your content, or copy and paste. Yeah, you can copy and paste from a Google Doc from Word, bring it in, and then say, now I'm going to highlight things and I'm going to make those my headings or whatever. I want to put in a cover block. And then when you start your cover block, okay, you can put your image, your color, or use a featured image. And look, I clicked on that. Now I got 2 blocks that are using the featured image. If I come back to the page and I change it back to a stylized version of Kata, my dog, there you go. And yeah, one thing you can. Very handy. This is another thing I like in WordPress core, just that setting the focus, you know. So if I've got an image a certain size and I've got a block's a certain size, I can say, well, always make sure to show his eyes, you know. That focal point picker is a great little tool. It's been there for a while, but it's not universally found in page builders that I've seen. I think that there's been improvement, but anyway, we're coming on time. We've talked a lot of things, a lot of overlap. Is there anything I missed? Anything you want to see? Do we want to just kind of have open discussion? Are there problems people want to solve? Let me know.
Yeah, I didn't see any questions in the chat, but any things while Peter has this up, especially I like to see the evolution of all this. Like you said, some of us have been using some of these blocks for a while, but I don't always, you know, keep up with the latest things that are happening with the blocks. So this, back to, I think Jim made the point too. It's impressive. I mean, we, as I said earlier, when we first started looking at Gutenberg 4 years ago ish, just to see where it's come in that time is pretty amazing. So this is, you know, it's and it still has there's some ways to go, but I think it's this, to me, the block editor piece is the most impressive part of what I've seen with Gutenberg.
This just real quick, the column block is, you know, they've added a lot of features there where, you know, each column is in effect a container, and in that container, and you have dimensions to set, not universally to classic themes, but you know, that ability to say, okay, I'm going to pick this block and I'm going to set the border, even though it's a column, you know, it's treating that column, you can have independence, and you can set here's where the padding is, you know, setting almost the padding 1, 2, 3, and you can see how crazy it is. Another feature that was added, if you notice when I click, you get a little blue kind of flash. That's just a little user interface thing to show you kind of what it's gonna, you know, this is what you're changing. I think we'll see that implemented a little bit more and better as time goes on, just to, again, to kind of make that editing experience as kind of clean as possible. But you know, that's just an example of a column block. What again was kind of neat, same idea. So I've got a column here with a paragraph in it, a column here with a paragraph in it. It's within the column block. You know, you can shrink you can expand and contract those, but say I wanted to change the order of my columns, I can just drag and drop it, and now the columns are switched, because, you know, your first column is now the green column and your second column is now the blue column. If you go, I want it the other way, there you go. So yeah, it's come a long way. You know, I come back here to the Cadence version. Look, it looks the same, but I am not going to, oh, there's a nice little accessibility thing where WordPress is being more aware of like color choices and how they affect accessibility. But you'll see I don't have those border color options here. It's not something that's available in the classic theme. But again, it copied over because it's in the code for that block that I copied from the full site editing. And one of the experiments I had, I built pages in a block theme, and then I just added a classic theme, and everything looked the way I wanted it to look. So it was a weird little cheat to use all of that styling, so I didn't have to do any CSS, but I could still make a page. I say you're doing well, if you're doing a single page, you probably don't even need much of a theme.
It's all good till you got to edit something, then you got
yeah. So yeah, I mean anyone want to, this is AI generated content, by the way. I started experimenting with code. We're going to go off on a tangent, but I started experimenting with some code because there is a plugin that I want. If anybody makes it, please let me know. On the block inserter, right? So here is the oh, that's interesting. What am I missing here, Ray? Help me out.
You're on the wrong section.
I was in a column.
Yeah.
And I tried to insert, you can only insert a column inside a column block. And then once you're in the column block, then you can add other blocks. So it is content aware, if you will. It knows what, it knows. But if I'm looking at my my block inserter, and for those who haven't used it, you can just drag and drop out of the block inserter onto your page. You get the blue bar. I'm going to set up a column that has 4 columns and 8 rows to set up a table. This is a lot of people don't know the table block is a thing, and there it is. That's how the drag and drop works from that. But if you're in here and you've loaded a number of, say, block collections, or you have plugins that add, this thing gets out of hand real quick. And so this is where I was saying in my notes, you can go over here to the 3 bars for options. You go down to preferences, and then you can go to blocks, and then you can start turning off blocks. You say you're never going to use something here, you're never going to use the calendar widget. You can just uncheck things and they'll go away. The thing that I really want is for plugins to not take over this and start putting what they want at the top of my list. Has anybody else experienced that? You load cadence blocks, it goes to the top of the list. But the worst one is there's one of the calendar plugins, not the event calendar, but something else. It puts all its calendar blocks at the top of the list.
Is having the ability to sort them, or it'd be good things.
So I'm trying to use AI, because I don't code, to create code snippet to have control over that. I've gotten so far as to be able to add a block group, and then there is a plugin where you can control. In fact, I could show you the link. Not only can you turn blocks on and off using the plugin, which becomes a universal thing because it's tied to the plugin, but you can move blocks from one group to another. So if you create a block group with a code, you can move blocks into it. And now I can have a favorites group that I create, and I can move things into it, but I can't put it at the top of the list yet. I haven't figured that part out. Anyway, we're going off on tangent because I had a long time.
Yeah, I don't see. So again, if folks have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. I didn't see anything in the chat. Anyway, a couple people had to drop. One that might just be worth showing quickly, Peter, is the locking and unlocking thing. I know they changed something in it for 6.1. I'm not sure exactly what they changed. And sometimes I get tripped up by locking. Sometimes where a section, if I copied it over, imported it from someplace else, all of a sudden it's locked. I'm like, wait, how come I can't move things around?
Locking is where locking is going to be valuable is when it is user or role defined, and because right now, and I don't know, if I lock this, I'm basically, so I went to the 3 dots for that block. I'm in the group block now, and here's my choice of lock, and then I can disable movement, or I can disable, removing it, or in this case, lock all, and then decide to apply to all blocks. And so if I do this, basically I can't move this block. Well, not quite true, because I can move everything around it. So, but the goal is that you're going to have, say, a group block where you want it to have this very specific layout, and then you can just edit the content in it and not start, you go, well, I like my gallery at the top. That's where it's going to have the power.
That's the next thing that's coming, right? I think with that's
not,
is that in 6.1 already, or no? That's not quite there. I forgot they called it.
Yeah, the user defined role level. It's not as far as I know.
Okay.
You basically are now just doing it so that you don't forget to not mess up.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, but I mean, that's all. I think block locking we're starting, but there's a lot more that's going to be coming with regard
And
to
some
that.
of that stuff too, again, even the locking things and only allowing a user to modify the images or certain things. Again, that's only helpful to website developers, not to website owners necessarily.
Yeah.
If you're a website owner, you need to know about that, because you're like, how come I can't change anything else? Why am I only seeing this? Well, it's because somebody locked you out of there. Somebody built your site that way, which
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's another thing that I think when folks are watching, especially the WordPress.org kind of discussions and videos out there, a lot of times they are talking to theme developers and folks a little bit, that have clients and all. Too often you hear things like, "Oh, and because we want to keep our clients out of touching everything."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in a lot of cases you do. It also depends on what your arrangement is with your client,
and I'm sure it's funny. Like when I first started working on other client sites, I remember, first time I saw a site that really heavily leveraged advanced custom fields, and I was like, what is this? You sort of look at the back end, everything was in these meta boxes and all that. It's like, well, that was the way you built sites back then too, is you just give people access to the fields, and then the smart developer behind the scenes would take that and create a layout with it and everything.
Yeah, exactly. This is that plugin I was talking about, the Gutenberg block manager that allows you, you get a panel like this to turn blocks, to turn things on and off. But what I kind of like about it, I wish this would improve. I just want to click the next arrow over to see the next image. This is always a pain to me. You could do it in small view.
Yeah.
But there is a way to, you just get a lot more management. You can put things in groups. So that's the plugin. I was, so if anybody wants to see something kind of fun that I thought the sandbox thing was kind of interesting, and but I think there are better options that are faster. So I mentioned this one, Taste WP, and one of our, I made something kind of fun. Can I show you the thing I made that's kind of fun? All right. So I was experimenting with something. I'm using Fluent Forms. I created a Fluent form. Somebody helped me with a little bit of snippet to grab the slug of a plugin. So say you wanted to give me a plugin that you might want to try, or let's take a look at plugins. So download plugins. Any plugin that you were, I wonder what that looks like on the back end. Anybody?
Grab something off the new ones. They're still
you know which one that gets talked about a lot. Have you heard about Depictor? So Depictor is a slider, but it's almost like in the vein of Revolution, but supposedly coded really well. So here I'm on the repository. Here's Depictor. There's a free version, there's a pro version. If I come up to the top, I grab the URL. Grabbing the URL, so it's wordpress.org/plugins, and then the slug is Depictor. If I put it on my little form here, and I paste that, and I get links to create site. So what this little form is doing nothing more than grabbing the slug and then creating the string that goes to Taste WP with things preloaded. So if you want to see that in Cadence, a generate presser and Astra kind of setup. So let me go to
like your blueprint sites, but with just that plugin.
Exactly. So I just click on that button and tell me this isn't happening faster than that's the sandbox thing.
Yeah.
And because I have a logged in account, which gives me like 7 days, but in that amount of time, I have a website built to experiment on. The plugins I have were what I the one cost when using Taste WP is that they preload some of theirs because they sell plugins. So copy and delete posts, my pop-ups, redirection, those are theirs. But Depictor is the one I told it to put, and then I had preloaded Cadence blocks, the Cadence starter templates, with the appearance of themes being load the Cadence theme. And now I told it to activate Depictor. And now I'm in the I'm on a website experimenting with the Depictor slide maker. I think they have the choices. They show free.
No, I think the playground thing they were showing wasn't so much to spin up. It was, I think the thing that they were trying to wow you with wasn't so much spinning up a site quickly with it, which you can. I think it's just more the fact of running WordPress entirely in a browser with no backend database,
it is.
Which is neat. So, but it is running an in-memory database someplace, but it's running it in the browser, or it's using some caching thing to basically do that, which is cool. Because what that does imply is, again, with HTML5 from years ago, you can basically run these sites offline too. So that would be neat, running an offline WordPress site.
Exactly. But if you call something sandbox, I'm going to assume that that's kind of what you're trying to make.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is I've created this. I think I created it. Oh no, I have to import it. Let's do that real quick. And then again, if anyone has any questions, we're coming up on the hour.
No, I think we're kind of wrapping things up after. I'll do our wrap-up slides real quick after this, Peter, too, once you're finished.
But now I'm just interested to see this. Let's see how long it takes to import. Again, this is all doing this on a Taste WP server. So it's not running on anything that I'm doing. It'll take a while. Why don't you do the wrap up?
Okay.
But anyway, this will import the it will import the slider, and then you have a block where you just pick it. It's like in effect a custom post type. Kind of fun. All done. Back to you.
Yeah, let me just grab it back real quick, and I think we're gonna end things in a second. Sorry, where's the slides? Sorry, the windows, Zoom windows moving around me. There we are.
And for those who stuck out the whole time, thank you.
Yeah. So I think we've covered a lot of our final thoughts. So again, WordPress 6.1, I'd say more of an incremental change upon 6.0, but one thing just to keep in mind too, and especially for newer people and people who've been using WordPress for a while, I mean, most people who attend our meetups are people who are keeping up with WordPress. I would just say that's gonna be more of the theme going forward into next year as well, is WordPress continues to evolve, as we talked about with that roadmap. And it really helps for you to start playing around with these new features. Even if you don't use them entirely on a site, just be aware of them. Create a demo site. Again, there's a lot of easy ways to create demo sites. Keep up with it, because I kind of found that too. I know going back even a couple of years ago, and I'm sure I had this probably conversation debate with Peter, was like when I was still fully a Divi guy and with my page builder, and I knew Gutenberg was out there, I always kind of put it aside and said, yeah, it's not quite there yet. But the more I got hands-on with it, the more I got comfortable using it. I'm with Jim. Like I hate going back to page builders now, because I'm like, it's so much easier using this thing it's being enhanced and growing and getting better. So just as my kind of final thoughts in general with WordPress is, 6.1, we have a lot of stuff to look forward to next year with new releases. So spend some time, take some time out to learn kind of what's happening. If you haven't played around 6.1 too much, hopefully we've given you some incentive and some ideas of what to look for and things that hopefully can help you improve your site and improve your enhance your ability to create sites faster. So we have a bunch of further resource links too that dive into these topics a bit more. As I said, we'll post, as always, we're going to post the recording of this to our YouTube channel sometime tomorrow. I'll send out the links as well, so be on the lookout for that. And as always, we're always looking for topic suggestions. If you have ideas, let us know. We're going to start planning out the next couple of months of our meetup, so we definitely would like some input into that. And that's it. That's all I got. Peter, any other parting thoughts?
No, I think I said enough today.
Well, thank you everyone again thanks for joining us. Thanks for, hanging around for the year. People have been with us for many of our meetups, and have a happy new year. We'll see you in the new year. So take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.